In this second part of the lesson on suprasegmentals, we're going to be focusing on the intonation patterns in the English language. The most common intonation pattern in English is that one of rising and falling intonation at the end of a declarative sentence, a command, or a WH question. Here are some examples. He wants to go home. We can see the stress and then the rising and falling intonation at the end. Same thing happens with she gave him $5 for it, give her a sweater, and what do you want to do with it? All of these sentences have a rising and falling final intonation pattern. The second intonation pattern is the one that happens at the end of a sentence where we have a rising intonation. This is very common in yes and no questions. For example, does he want to go home? We can see the stress on the last word and then the rising intonation. The same thing happens for all of the other examples. Did she give him $5 for it? Couldn't she have seen him? Do you want to give it to him? Do you think he wants it? All of these yes and no questions have a rising intonation at the end. Another important intonation pattern in English is the one that concerns non-final intonation. And this is going to happen in complex sentences. So the first part is going to have a non-final falling intonation, but the second part is going to have a full falling intonation. Let's look at these examples here. When John left the house, it was still raining. The man you met yesterday has left town. After we have dinner, we'll go to a movie. We can see that in all of these complex sentences, the first half has non-final falling intonation, but then the second part is going to have a full falling intonation. It is important to be able to make this non-final intonation because we have to make it clear that our idea is not complete. So when I say, when John left the house, everybody knows that there's something else coming right afterwards, and that's why non-final intonation is very important. There's another intonation pattern that is that of continuation rise, and it's used for listing things. For example, he bought apples, peaches, pears, and oranges. In the same way, check this pronunciation for this second sentence. I have 2 pencils, a black pen, and some ink. And the last example is pronounced as follows. We went to Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam, and London. So we can see that as we are listing the first elements, we have a continuing rise, but then at the end we're going to have the typical falling intonation at the end of a declarative sentence. Now, this continuing intonation is very useful for giving phone numbers. For example, we can say, my number is 222-773-2236. So the person that we're giving our phone to knows exactly when the number has ended because we have a falling intonation. But with the first numbers, we're going to have a continuing intonation. And this is very useful because it facilitates understanding. So let's just read the last 2 examples. 212-378-8821 and 222-576-0703. So this is the way in which we are going to provide our phone numbers by using continuing intonation and then full falling intonation at the end. The last intonation pattern that we'll talk about concerns tag questions, and in this case we have 2 different intonation patterns. The first one is as follows. Phonetics very interesting, isn't it? In this case, we're just using a tag to engage in conversation. But if we say phonetics very interesting, isn't it? In this case, we are asking a real question. Let's practice. You're coming to my party, aren't you? Versus you're coming to my party, aren't you? In the second tag, we are asking a real question. It is very important to remember these two different intonation patterns for tag questions and use them appropriately. Now let's talk about intonation and pauses. Maybe we take it for granted, but silence has a meaning and pauses are important in conversation. Imagine the following situation. Two young people, and then the first one says, ¿Me quieres? And the second one says, ¿Sí? We can see here that that little moment of silence counts a lot, and we can see that the person B is going to be in big trouble. So we just need to emphasize here that sounds are made up of air, and of course we need to breathe. That means that we're going to be making pauses, but it is very important that we make the pauses at an appropriate moment. So when we have boundaries between thoughts and ideas, normally the pauses are going to be there, and we should indicate that we're going to pause by using appropriate intonation patterns. Here are some examples in which we can say different things just by changing the intonation and the moments in which we pause. Let's look at these different pairs. When I say, John said the teacher is stupid, we're talking about the teacher. But when I say, John said the teacher is stupid, we're talking about John. In the same case, when I say he sold his houseboat and car, he's selling two things. But if I say he sold his house, boat, and car, he sold actually three things. The same thing happens with she likes pineapples. She likes one thing versus she likes pineapples, in which case she likes two things. Here are some other examples. When I say, would you like some soup or salad? I'm asking you which one you prefer. But if I ask you, would you like some soup or salad? I'm just saying if you want or not. Another example would be, the president said, that reporter is lying. We're talking about the reporter, but if we say the president said that reporter is lying, we're talking about the president. Finally, in this last example, wooden matches are used to start fires refers to one thing, but wooden matches are used to start fires refers to two things. So it is very important, once again, that we use the pauses and that we use the intonation in order to signal the meaning that we want to express. In this way, our speech is going to be more understandable for native speakers, and also we're going to be using the language more effectively. So, this is all we have to say about the suprasegmental aspects of pronunciation concerning intonation patterns. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I will be seeing you next time.